2 p.m. Eastern Time.
Just ahead on C-SPAN, we begin our coverage of the flooding in the Midwest and federal relief efforts as we show you a portion of today's 5 p.m. newscast from KSDK TV in St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis is on the west bank of the Mississippi River.
You're watching Channel 5, KSDK St. Louis, where the news comes first. With Karen Foss, Rick Edlund, Bob Richards, and Mike Bush. This is News Channel 5 at 5.
For days and for nights, volunteers work to build a wall to hold back the water.
And tonight in Lee May, they are seeing that wall break down. Good evening. I'm Karen Foss.
And I'm Rick Edlund. We'll go to Lee May in just a moment, but first, thousands of St. Charles residents may be in the dark tonight because they've lost electrical power.
A substation surrounded by water is flooding. News Channel 5's Randy Jackson is live in St. Charles with the latest on the effort to regain power. Randy.
Rick, things are just getting worse and worse and worse here in St. Charles. I'm in Blanchette Park right now. It's beginning to resemble a military encampment with all of the National Guard troops coming in to help. A substation at Hooster and Elmont Roads is flooding, as you said, and many residents are being left without power tonight. We were on board a National Guard helicopter that was carrying UE inspectors. The lights were still on, indicating it's still up, but UE has had to shut some of the systems down and divert the power. And that's meant nearly 15,000 homes and businesses near Elm and Tam are in the dark tonight.
One of the power supplies.
And we're asking them to lighten the load a little bit so we can carry that. So as long as they do that and work with us, we'll be able to stay there.
How you ringing people up the old-fashioned way?
Just by hand. No more computers. We can't look up on computers. We can't ring out. We can't do returns. Everything by hand.
Back to the old days.
The old days, they're back. Hopefully for only a short time, though.
Now, UE officials are asking many of the residents in town tonight to raise their thermostats, to cut the electricity, maybe turn off their air conditioners if they're not needed. Also, maybe if you're cooking dinner tonight, not to use an electric range. They say every little bit helps. They're also asking people, if they don't belong in this community, to stay away. Every person that comes in to take a look at the rising waters around here in St. Charles just puts an extra strain on many of the city's resources tonight. We'll have more on this story tonight at 6. Reporting live from St. Charles, I'm Randy Jackson.
Randy, is anyone there totally without power at this point?
Yes, many of the residents we talked with, and we'll meet some of them tonight at 6, they're in the dark tonight. They can't use a microwave. They can't cook. They're just sitting in their homes waiting for UE to turn their power back on, and the merchants are in the same boat.
Okay, well, the heat and the flooding together make for a terrible situation.
What a mess. Of course, St. Charles isn't the only problem area. Despite the best efforts of man and machine, the floodwaters are winning in Lee May as well.
And Dan Gray continues our Floodwatch 93 coverage. And Dan, how is the levee out there holding?
Well, not very good, Karen, right now. As a matter of fact, St. Louis County emergency management officials are on the scene now, ordering more evacuations. They've determined that there are more leaks, more breaks in the levee. A huge hole does remain in the levee, in the River de Pere levee. Joining me now is St. Louis County Executive Buzz Westfall, just on the scene. Some dangerous situations developing, Buzz?
Well, this was inevitable what was going to happen. So one of these sand boils like this one just down the street is now blown. So I don't know how many gallons a minute are coming out. But slowly, this Lee May area here, these 60 houses that we evacuated last night, I'm really glad we did now because the flooding has started and there's no stopping it. But at least it's coming out slow enough that anybody that's still in here can get out.
What about the integrity of the levee over the long run for the weekend and for the next few days?
Well, actually, this will relieve some of the pressure, this slow flooding. But there's no way of knowing that, and that's why I evacuated last night, told the people to get out, and that's why we declared a state of emergency today, is that the levee could go any time. And I'd rather be 2 days early on the evacuation than 2 seconds late. So once it breaks, if it breaks, then there's a disaster, and these houses will all be destroyed. This way there'll be water damage, but at least it'll just be water damage.
Okay.
But now we know for a fact it's coming. What we knew was inevitable anyway in the next few days has now started, so the people are going to have to get out of here.
Okay. St. Louis County Executive Buzz Westfall, thank you very much for joining us. News Channel 5 Sharon Stevens was here earlier today when Most of the people were evacuating. The word went out from St. Louis County emergency management officials very early this morning. Sharon, what's the latest on the families getting out?
Okay. Well, the families, we understand, most of them are gone. And exactly what Buzz Westphal was talking about is that more families are going to have to go because there's now a breach in the Kaiser Creek levee, which is right around the corner from where we are, the River de Pere levee. And right behind us, this hole or this sand boil it's about 10 feet deep. That's pretty deep, and it's been flowing pretty steadily. There's a second smaller hole just behind it. You can't see it, but it is behind us. And officials say that that water could break through at any minute. The hole in the River de Pere levee forced the early evacuation of 150 families in the north end of Limay. St. Louis County Police went door to door, giving residents the bad news.
Hope it don't get too bad. Hope the water don't get too high, and maybe, come back, redo it, start over again.
When Highway Department crews got here this morning, they say this hole that's right behind me was about this size, and in less than a half an hour, it grew from a couple of inches to a couple of feet. The break in the levee comes just 2 days after a huge effort to hold back the water on the nearby Kaiser Creek. Another weakness threatens that area. Meanwhile, as the evacuation continues, Laclede gas crews are turning off the gas in the area, and work crews are trying to contain the expanding hole.
I've never done this before. I really don't know. We're working at building a structure per the Corps that...
You mean the Army Corps of Engineers?
The Army Corps of Engineers. We're working at building a structure that's going to be at least as high as the levee.
And basically what they're doing now, Dan, is cleaning up in the area behind us. We'll be over there in just a little while. It really is something when you see all of that water in the street.
Yeah, it is really quite a frightening sight here for many of the residents and many of the volunteers who've worked so hard now to see that maybe it's been a futile effort because the water is rising here at Kaiser Creek and along the River de Pere. Well, further south of St. Louis, along Jefferson County, an evacuation order has gone out for residents who live along the low-lying areas near the Merrimack River and the Mississippi River. The floodwaters of the Mississippi already are moving into the Festus Crystal City area. They've flooded out some homes and businesses there. Mobile homes along Highway 141 are being flooded by the rising Merrimack River. A temporary shelter has been set up now at the Festus Armory, and approximately 50 roads in Jefferson County are closed because of high water. The sandbagging operations do continue throughout Jefferson County, although authorities say they are asking for more volunteers for sandbagging. However, they're asking any sightseers to definitely stay away from the area. Upriver, though, there's more bad news north of St. Louis. There is more rain today, which means more flooding in our future. And News Channel 5's Chief Meteorologist Bob Richards is standing by at the edge of the rising Mississippi downtown with the latest. Bob?
Well, Dan, I got to tell you, it is an absolutely awesome sight down here. I am on the first landing of the three sets of stairs that go from Lenore K. Sullivan Boulevard, which is down there somewhere, on up towards the top of the arch. It's almost eerie because it almost seems as if we're at ground level when actually we're about 12 feet above the level of the street. Unfortunately, all of the rain that you see out here, all of this water is coming from upstream. So even though it was a dry day today across the two-state region, it is no good news for us simply because of the heavy rains over Iowa earlier today. More rain, more showers, more thunderstorms over the upper Midwest. Over Iowa, several inches of rain fell and scattered very heavy thunderstorms and downpours. Again, everything that you see there has to come by the Gateway Arch before it heads down to the Gulf of Mexico. And over the next several days, it will. The rains continue, although it has let up at least temporarily. More thunderstorms expected later this evening and overnight, and there are flash flood watches posted for northern Missouri as close to us as Pike County, Missouri, and Pike County, Illinois. In the meantime, heavy areas of rainfall staying away from the eastern seaboard. In fact, in the east, record-setting high temperatures today up and down the eastern seaboard from Maine all the way down to Florida, where in New England today, temperatures were on up into the 90s to around 100. New York City today up to a new record of 101. Yesterday in Newark, New Jersey, it was 105. It is hot and dry there, and the reason that they're hot and dry is the same reason that we're wet and very, very damp across the Midwest. Take a look at the Bermuda High that shows up on the weather map. It's been showing up for the past several days across the southeastern part of the country. It's the very strong, very stable system of fair weather along the eastern seaboard, been contributing to a very hazy type of condition back east, contributing to record highs there. We're just on the outside of that, so across the Midwest, there is really no place for all of this rain to go. So the rain lines up in a stalled front all the way from the southern plains back into the upper Midwest. What we've been saying for the past several days is that the pattern remains stable. We're looking for a change. Finally, we're seeing the change over the next several days. That big Bermuda high will gradually slide northwestward. Things will stabilize here in the Midwest and in the upper Midwest. I think by next week, everything starts to dry out, not only here, but upstream as well. We'll have more on that. I'll look at river stages across the area and, of course, the weekend forecast coming up in just a few moments.
All right, Bob. Well, that dry out can't come soon enough, I tell you. We have been advised by St. Louis County emergency management officials and St. Louis County Police to leave this area now because the water is beginning to surround us and many homes and many other people here. So we're going to send it back to Rick and Karen in the studio for the moment, and hopefully we'll be back live with you 6. But the water is rising very rapidly from the River de Pear levee, which is springing leaks, as well as the levee along Kaiser Creek. So we'll send it back to you. Hopefully we'll be back at 6.
Okay.
A lot of other people in the area, they need to get to higher ground.
And be careful.
Well, while we have really been concentrating on the flood the past 3 days, the tiny Illinois town of Mosier has been cut off by water for almost 2 weeks.
And News Channel 5's Mike Owens flew into Mosier today. He has details on how the community is coping with its isolation. Mike?
Karen, Mosier is usually a wide spot in the road on Highway 96 in Calhoun County, Illinois. Now it's a narrow spot in the middle of the Mississippi River. Here's Mosier from the air, no way in but boat. Fortunately, there are lots of them. This is the commissary run. Red Cross food delivered to those who need it. Every day like clockwork. Alma Martin received dinner, since her car is in the garage. That's a new car.
Yeah, I know, but it has to stay till water goes down.
Here's Clendeni's store, also the post office, but the floodwaters have shortened that to post off. It's moved to temporary quarters in a high ground garage south of town. The postal stickers sharing space with a lawnmower. Town jokers point to this sign to outsiders like me. It can be had cheap now, but the price will go up when dry. Jerry Jones is the unofficial mayor and water taxi driver, worried about the town's older folks.
They're sticking it out in-house that, could be flooded at any time,
Luckily, the phones are still working. So is the electricity in most of the occupied houses. Neighbors Lena Pence and Doris Hatfield aren't too worried about the river, and they don't feel too isolated.
You can walk part way, but you can't walk all the way out. Water above us and water below us, so you're just stranded.
Fortunately, you have neighbors who have boats.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just south of Mosier is Hamburg, Illinois. It, too, is partially covered with water, but it does have road access. Residents in both towns say the water dropped today, about a ½ inch, according to those very sophisticated measuring techniques they use there. Yardsticks stuck into the water nearby.
That could be a good indication for all of us downriver with barring more rain. Thanks, Mike.
A lot of people have been through this before. They're staying very calm.
They're calm.
Well, coming up, rising water can mean rising tensions.
That story as our Floodwatch 93 coverage continues.
I'm Ruthie Zell in Arnold. Coming up, dealing with the stress of a major flood.
Vice President Gore was on the phone to the flood ravaged today. Find out what he's saying next. Our Floodwatch 93 coverage continues now with a look at the high price some flood victims are paying emotionally.
All the sandbagging, evacuating, and fears about flood damage have been very stressful for many flood victims. News Channel 5's Ruth Ezell joins us from the newsroom with more on this problem. Ruth?
Well, Karen and Rick, this so-called flood of the century has disrupted thousands of lives in the bi-state. While many victims are losing or about to lose their homes, they may also feel like they're losing their minds because of all this stress. In the neighborhood of Crystal and Gary Hargis of Arnold, coping is the order of the day. Because of rising floodwaters, they're worried about raw sewage getting into their water system, looters trying to break into their house after they move out, neighbors whose homes have already been invaded by the flood, and a long list of other concerns.
It's just been one thing on top of another. It's not over quickly like a tornado or something like that. It just drags and drags and wears you down. You're just totally exhausted.
The garage where Gary Hargis has his custom countertop business has been cleared out of all his equipment, and his business has been put on hold.
and I may not have any customers when I get back now, but it's just a chance I got to take. My house is important to me, same as my business.
Psychologists say the stress that comes from dealing with a major flood has many facets and can be very severe. But there are things flood victims can do to help protect themselves from the emotional and physical burdens of such a crisis. Psychologist Teresa DeShields of St. Louis University Medical Center says it's all a matter of getting your priorities straight.
The first thing that I would say is to ensure the safety of family members and yourself, so you don't have to worry about that part of it. Take care of the essentials, getting enough rest, eating well as best you can, just so that you can buffer your body from the effects of stress.
Dr. DeShields also cautions flood victims not to worry about the what-if scenario. If I'd only done this or that, things wouldn't have been so bad. That only makes matters worse. And she urges flood victims to take advantage of all the support services available. That'll help ease the burden of stress a great deal. Rick and Karen?
Gotta be terrible. Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks. Well, you can help ease the stress of people all over our area hit hard by the flooding. News Channel 5 and the Red Cross are pitching in to help raise money. Now, Saturday and Sunday at 6 area shopping malls will be collecting cash donations for flood relief. 5 area radio stations and people from Security Armored Car Service will also be taking part. That's Saturday and Sunday from 10 o'clock in the morning to 6. If you'd rather give your time, well, that's needed as well. The Volunteer 5 hotline is a flood relief hotline this week. More than 1,200 people have already called, but please, for more help, just keep coming in. Call the hotline at the number you see on our screen, 969-VOL5. Our volunteer operators will let you know the many ways you can help, and the volunteers will be standing by tonight until 7 o'clock.
And Vice President Gore is scheduled to visit the St. Louis area Monday to tour flood sites. The Vice President got updates by conference call from the 8 states in this affected flood region. In the call, Gore told Governor Carnahan's Chief of Staff, Mark Farinella, that he expects the state's aid request to be approved in about 2 days.
That was a portion of today's 5 p.m. newscast from St. Louis, Missouri TV station KSDK. C-SPAN will have complete coverage of Vice President Gore's phone calls to governors in areas affected by the floods later tonight. But first, it's a news conference held today here in Washington, D.C. by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and other groups coordinating relief to flooded areas.